Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on contention over Smith government picks for the Electoral Boundaries Advisory Panel. But first, a move to restore passenger rail service.
In eastern Canada, they're talking about a high-speed rail between Quebec City and Toronto. We think this would be a nice companion project in Western Canada.
The Premier on the prospect of high-speed rail, one day connecting Alberta's two big cities, a component of the Smith government's newly released passenger rail master plan, a 30-year strategy with work already said to be underway on connecting LRT systems with the international airports in Edmonton and Calgary. And joining us now, Paul Langan, author, historian, and founder of an educational group known as High Speed Rail Canada. Paul, welcome to Alberta Primetime.
Well, it's great to be.
Maybe as a starting point, high-speed rail has been studied before in the province. How different is this approach by the Smith government, and how realistic is it?
Well, we started off in 1985, so I'd like to be optimistic. And, you know, this is a large study that's not just talking about high-speed rail, it's talking about other commuter rail and regional rail. I want to be positive on it, but, you know, there is some cynicalness in me.
Is high-speed rail a want or a need? What would warrant making this a reality?
Well, Michael, I'll be honest with you. I would just like to see any inner city passenger rail in Alberta. It's an embarrassment. Between your largest cities, you have nothing. I mean, high-speed rail would be great, but we need something. Like, it really doesn't make sense. The rest of the modern world has passenger rail, and for some historical reasons, you guys, Edmonton and Calgary, just don't get it together to make it happen.
I understand you actively advocated here in Alberta for high-speed rail back in the early 2000s. Why have past efforts, as you say, that have gone back all the way to the mid-'80s, why have those past efforts fallen by the wayside?
Well, it's pretty simple, and you can't blame any particular party because it didn't matter which party was in power. The political will was not there. But to supplement that, the public will was not there. I mean, politicians do respond to the public. So if the public isn't saying we want a train between Calgary and Edmonton, we'd rather go on that highway too and risk our life in the wintertime, then that's what you get.
Linking Edmonton and Calgary with their respective airports certainly appears that there is engagement at the municipal level for that. If that in fact gets off the ground, how likely is that to pave the way to further expansion, move some of this forward?
Well, what I would have liked to see is your premier next to the Prime Minister announcing a definitive amount of money saying, here's what we're building. What we got was we're going to spend $15 million on another study. And again, I want it to happen so bad, but it's just become another process. Whereas right now we're nation building. We could have announced an Edmonton to Calgary. They announced Toronto to Quebec City. But the Premier was more preoccupied with pipelines and so it's not happening. We're just getting a $15 million further study.
What about realistic, that renewal of passenger rail, though, between Calgary and Banff? That's certainly a project here in Alberta that's been pitched by the private sector.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Again, it shouldn't even be a question of should we. You have a situation there that you're desperate to have an alternative to taking the highway, and there's a way to do it. It's a no-brainer. Again, somehow there's a cultural mindset in Alberta from the politicians that are preventing this from making it a priority. But as far as the idea, it's a fantastic idea, and anybody in Banff will tell you it's a great idea, and anybody that wants to go there will tell you it's a great idea.
If there is commitment from the province to pursue high-speed rail, is it then on the private sector to pony up the necessary dollars? Make any of this a reality? You know, you brought up pipelines a moment ago. Could this be a situation that maybe mirrors dynamics around the Alberta-Ottawa MOU?
Right. And certainly, just like in Ontario, for instance, or many projects around the world, it's a public-private partnership to make this happen, 100%. But what I've always said about this is you need to say we're open for business to do this. And then you could even get other countries that come in and want to partner. I mean, the Japanese are always looking to partner. So are the Chinese, for that matter. So are people, the Spanish consortiums. So, and of course, the French consortiums. But your premier has to say, we're open for business. We want to connect Calgary to Banff, for example. Let's make this happen. I haven't heard that.
There is some contention, though, over the current federal government's efforts to link Toronto and Quebec City. How challenged do you see the Alberta government maybe being in harnessing the degree of right-of-way needed for such a train between Calgary and Edmonton?
Oh, Michael, I mean, that's a great point. NIMBYs, not in your backyard, is very strong these days because of social media and the ability to get your message out so quickly. But again, that's not the reason you don't say, let's go for it. That might be the reason when you're implementing it, you say, well, we should do this route. It's best for the public. It's best for the environment, whatever your criteria are. But that's not the reason not to say, let's have passenger return to Alberta after over a half a century. I mean, we can't worry about that. There's always people that are going to protest any major infrastructure project.
Maybe as a final question for you, Paul, a future that runs on rails, that was signage that appeared at the rollout of the master plan. So what do you see it taking? Who needs to lead the way to make any of this a reality?
Well, I think the premier does, but it can't be a wide scope 30, 60 years thing. We have to get a win right now. And you just said, like, Calgary to Banff. Sure, let's say that's our priority. You know, Prime Minister Carney, we want $5 million, you know, we want $500 million to get this going. Private sector, we want you to join in. We want you to build and operate it. Yes, we want these train cars made in Canada. A very concrete project. This is the time. This is not a time to say, let's do a study that stuff will happen between 30 and 60 years. In the plan, it suggests that Lethbridge wouldn't get trains for 60 years. Geez, everybody will be dead.
All right. We'll leave it there for time. Appreciate yours this evening, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Paul Langan is an author, historian, and founder of the educational group High Speed Rail Canada. From the pace of pipeline progress to the latest on redrawing electoral boundaries and Alberta's passenger rail master plan. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, former MLA Karen McPherson and Stacey Hatcher, communications professional who has worked for Conservative leaders in Ottawa and on Conservative leadership and election campaigns here in Alberta. Good evening to you both. It's just 3 weeks until Alberta's pipeline application is due for delivery to the Major Projects Office. And while details still limited, the Premier expressing confidence at the Global Energy Show Tuesday that she'll have a route ready to go by deadline.
There were specific dates that were put in there to give that indicator to industry that the federal government and Alberta are committed to renewing the relationship and to working together.
Now, when it came to discussions around the pipeline, though, the head of one of Canada's largest oil sands companies said it is currently unfinanceable by the private sector. Cenovus CEO John McKenzie says the industrial carbon pricing system makes Canadian oil uncompetitive and inhibits production growth needed to fill the proposed pipeline. Karen, both the Premier and the Natural Resources Minister, Tim Hodgson, were boosting progress made between the two levels of government where the pipeline MOU is concerned. But what's to be made of just how close that Canada Day deadline now is?
Well, I think, we would have expected both the Premier and the Minister to sound very positive when the whole world is here in Calgary for the Global Energy Show. And she does sound very committed to meeting that deadline. It doesn't sound like she's looking for an extension. So I imagine what we're going to hear is that there is a partner and that there is a path forward to go ahead with a pipeline to the West Coast. Something else that's been highlighted is partnership with Indigenous groups. So I imagine we're going to hear something about that too when an announcement is finally made. And hopefully there's some communication going on with BC as well, because of course they're still voicing their objections.
Stacey, if the regulatory conditions have been realigned, at what point does the pipeline talk shift from focus on the politicians to the private sector picking up the ball and committing to building?
I think there's a lot of conversations happening behind the scenes, Michael, and it's here's what I would say from my time working in oil and gas. Here in Alberta is, Cenovus is a really respected voice, and they've been around for a while here. They're very uber Canadian and about producing locally and strengthening the economy. I think when they are raising red flags, that we have to pay attention, and this is what's happening in Alberta. Like Carney's saying a lot of things I think that people are very excited about, but the proof is going to be in the action. And I think like many Albertans, we're waiting to see what is going to come of this deadline. I mean, Minister Hodgson is saying Canada is open for business and that we're a reliable source of energy. We're a reliable source of energy as long as we have a reliable investment climate and reliable policies to go along with it.
Karen, to what degree do you see the state of this pipeline talk potentially clouding the global energy show dynamics around Stacey's point there about bolstering Canada's status of being a reliable global energy supplier?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that the Mackenzie from Cenovus came forward during the Global Energy Show, that is going to introduce some hesitation as well as conversations about separatism, because that introduces political uncertainty to a degree. And that's a consideration, regardless of what kind of investment it is. Money wants to go where things are stable. But I think overall, they've come together, the federal and the provincial government have come together to present a cohesive message for the people that are attending. And I think that's going to be really important, more so than smaller stories that might come up as a result. I think the point about the investment climate is going to be really important for the government, to try and balance what their environmental goals are with what the investment goals are. And I imagine we'll see some more information about that coming forward.
Stacey, international attendance at the Global Energy Show said to be considerable. How likely is this to be one of those now or never moments for both politicians and the oil patch?
Listen, I don't want to tear down the event because it's a massive event for us here in Western Canada, and it sees thousands of people walk through its doors. There's lots of networking and business deals being made at the Global Energy Show, but there's a large part of it that is also performative. And so the feds are there, and they're going to say things that are going to try to bolster that stability and security. I mean, our provincial government is always there at the Global Energy Show, and so they need to be there, but there is a certain amount of performative theater to this, and the rubber will hit the road once the Global Energy Show is gone. And so that's where I think most Albertans are really going to be looking for the key signs that projects are going to start to move.
All right. Time for us to take a bit of a break, but when we come back, appointments to the panel set to advise MLAs on new electoral boundaries. More in a moment. Welcome back. Efforts to redraw electoral boundaries back in the headlines with a focus on Smith government picks for the panel that will be advising MLAs. Notably, former federal Conservative cabinet minister Monty Solberg, founder of New West Public Affairs, and Darwin Durney, who previously recommended electoral map changes that mixed urban and rural ridings. The NDP appointed members are constitutional law professor Gerard Kennedy and former Okotoks town councillor Brent Robinson. Stacey, I'll start with you first this time. The opposition expressing frustration, concern over the UCP appointee, saying Monty Solberg recently registered to lobby the finance minister. Should that raise eyebrows?
I knew you were going to start with that one, Michael. That's the most controversial part of this. So listen, I think a few things. One is we're obviously overdue to review the electoral boundaries, and there are two main groups that are overlooking this, if you will. The one that you've referenced, where we have Dr. Kennedy and Brent Robinson, and then there's the MLA Oversight Committee, if you will. And so I think the government has done a relatively decent job at constituting their parts, and I think that the opposition has done a very good job of constituting their parts. So it's not a purely partisan group one way or the other. Now, when it comes back to Mr. Solberg, listen, he's more than New West. He's been a federal cabinet minister. He's run in Alberta through subsequent elections. He knows the landscape. He knows the ridings. And here's a little anecdotal story I will tell you. My own father, who was in a very rural Quebec riding over 2 terms under a former Conservative government many years ago, had seen his riding redistributed multiple times. And my father was always consulted on that because he's the guy driving the ridings from one end to the other. And that's an important voice to be heard. And I think that was the purpose of appointing Monty to this role, is he does actually have a really valuable voice, considering he's run in the Alberta landscape multiple times.
Karen, the appointments are obviously to an independent advisory panel. That's what it's called. So what's to be made of the second UCP pick? Darwin Durney. He co-authored a previous submission calling for several urban-rural ridings be combined in the Calgary area.
Yeah, Calgary ended up looking like a pizza. I mean, that's an interesting choice to make. I don't know that it's going to make things easier for the panel to come up with suggestions for riding redistribution. I think that's definitely someone who's going to be agitating when there are discussions about where the boundaries should be. And I'm not sure what the thinking was behind that, other than both sidesing, like making sure all voices are heard. But it's really quite an unusual approach. You expect to see some inclusion of rural with urban on the outsides of any particular municipality that's larger. But the way that it was divided up, it would really be difficult for anyone to represent all of the interests of all of the people, because what happens in rural Alberta is not the same as an urban center like Calgary. Evanston, how many schools it has is really important compared to what sort of subsidies are farmers getting or relief when there's a drought. So they're very, very different issues, and that makes it a lot more challenging to have really effective representation when one representative is trying to traverse both of those needs.
Stacey, one more on this. The UCP caucus issued a statement saying Albertans can trust this process will be handled fairly, professionally, and with integrity. What do you see hinging on the outcome of this process politically?
I mean, first of all, I'm going to bemoan the state where government has to assure people that things are going to be transparent and honest. But sadly, that's the world we live in, where we are still, in the midst of having trust erosion in our democratic institutions and needing third parties and governments to reassure voters that everything is going to be on the up and up. I mean, I think it's going to be a very interesting and yet very challenging conversation, because there are multiple viewpoints at the table. And so it will be interesting to see the mix of ridings in terms of urban versus rural, and if there's going to be some intermingling. I don't disagree with Karen's point. It makes it a lot more challenging to represent a riding where there are multiple and very diverse needs. But I think that the other big thing too is the geography. And so if you're an MLA and most of your weekends in your constituency consist of you in your car, that's really hard on an MLA as well. So, I mean, I really hope that they start with the geographic distributions and making ridings manageable for the representatives to actually be able to see and meet people.
All right, let's squeeze in one more quick topic. That's the Smith government's new passenger rail master plan. Early elements include connecting LRT systems to the 2 international airports as well. Future vision, high-speed rail between Edmonton and Calgary, and Calgary to Banff route also on the radar. Karen, we heard perspective on the plan from rail historian, author Paul Langan off the top. What's your read on this master plan powering forward and not being destined like others in the past for a dusty shelf somewhere?
With a timeline so far out, I'm not sure that we can really be assured that it's not going to end up on a dusty shelf somewhere. There's really nothing that says that action is going to be taken imminently. And this is football that's been kicked around for a long, long time. I mean, some of the things that are in there, of course, are really, really needed. So the connection from the airports to city centers is really imperative. Connection between Edmonton and Calgary, really, really helpful. And Calgary out to Banff, I think, would be a delight for people who are traveling here, tourists who want to see the mountains. And the closest airport is Calgary. And, now it's either a bus or you have to rent a car. All of those things are wins. I would like to see it accelerated so that we have a goal, as far as goals go, of a connection between any of those points with a stake in the sand. This is the date that's going to happen.
Stacey, high-speed rail one day linking Calgary and Edmonton. What kind of political oomph is it going to take to make that a reality? And how much needs to get to Karen's point, how much needs to really get started in the here and now?
Well, I mean, she's right. This has been a topic of discussion for a while, and it's really heated up in Calgary over the last 5 years, especially coming from the tourism sector. We know that we're a major plank in the economics of the province and drivers in the province. And we also know that many of our most, wonderful provincial parks are seeing a lot of traffic and a lot of cars, and we're trying to manage that. I mean, this would be something that would be very helpful in that regard. But I think the other important thing too is Calgary, Edmonton is one of the busiest corridors in our country, and yet it doesn't have a high-speed rail linking either city. So to me, that's really exciting, and I think a lot of people will get behind that, and connecting our airports will be fabulous too. Now, here's where I'm going to laugh a little bit, and Karen, I love your idea of the government setting milestones in terms of what it's achieving and when, but oh my goodness, that's ever going to happen.
All right. We're out of time. We have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you.
Nice to see you both.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about the province now allowing liquor to be served starting at 6 in the morning. Christopher's not cracking open the bubbly just yet, saying this is a bad idea, very bad idea. Equally as critical is Robert, who writes, stupid, stupid, stupid. Who starts drinking at 6 a.m.? Mortoff sees some logic in it, noting many businesses are 24/7 these days. Why shouldn't shift workers be able to buy and consume alcohol at times convenient to them, the same as any 9-5 worker? Hot Chips asks, why not? You can purchase smokes, pop, candy, fast food, and whatever else at that time. And it appears Andrew's glass, or maybe it's perhaps his bowl, half full, saying, I love tequila and Fruit Loops. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, country music artist Corb Lund says his anti-coal mining petition has exceeded the bar for collection of signatures. So what is he watching for now? We'll find out on Thursday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone. From all of us at Alberta Primetime, thank you for watching, and join us again next time.